meeting for the MUD 47. Appreciate to Woodlands Water and San Jacinto and our support staff for working with us to move this back to tonight, Thursday night, instead of our normal night. Much appreciated. We had just some conflicts, so thanks for doing that. I know it's another night out of your schedule, but it means a lot for us to be here at this meeting. So thanks very much for that. I don't think we have anyone for comments from the public, so we'll go through that. And then the next item be consider an act on request for adjustment or relief. Nothing on that. Okay, so thanks. So I think we're good with 1, 2, 3. So the next item is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll put a motion in.
Second. Any discussion needed?
Yep.
Any
I think
questions?
it's good.
On the consent agenda, so the minutes are good and all the financials and all that's good. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, on to our regular agenda. We're going to review the draft fiscal year operating budget and recommended water rate structure.
All right, I'll point you to a couple documents. One is the draft budget memo that's provided here. Another one is the spreadsheet, which is the actual budget. And then lastly, in a minute, we'll talk about the retail water rate structure. Want to point out a few highlights on the budget. The overall expected revenue for next year is $12,130,000 and change, with expenses of $11,136,000. That results in a net gain of $995,000. We're got the budget set up so get you in a good spot going forward. Before a 950 the Bear Ranch Dam project. And then other thing I wanted to mention is the Woodlands Water Agency admin fee is going down from $7.18 to $7. So a little discount there, or a little decrease there rather. On the budget, if you'll see that 995 or 994, 768 there, that's the projected surplus from this particular budget. Keep in mind the budget on the revenue side includes obviously your water rates and the resultant revenue from that, as well as the tax rate, which we'll talk about setting the tax rate here in a few minutes. On the backside in the tan is really where we do our work on repairing water, sewer, drainage, and then the other increased projects or repairs that we have forecasted for next year. We do have a little bit of increase in two particular areas. One is in the sewer repair, and then also there in the water distribution maintenance repair. And there is a little bit of money set aside that we split across all the MUDs for AC water line review for just the WWA lines. So we'll kind of, as the plans go are being contemplated for SDRA, we'll kind of be monitoring that and see where we go with our lines as well. So that's included. I want to point you out to the bottom of the tents, this side of the budget. Something that we look at as kind of an indicator of health for a district is that bottom line number, and that is that starts at 5.6, ends at 7.7, a number at the very bottom. That is your months of debt coverage for the budget. And so industry standard is more like in 12. We'd like to get with the environment that we have, with the aging infrastructure that we have across the Woodlands, we're working with all the MUDs to try to get them to get that up to 9 or somewhere between 9 and 12, somewhere in that range. It's a little bit more healthier. Obviously this year, as you can see with that surplus, that's actually what's partly causing you to go from 5.6 to the 7.7. So that's kind of what's doing that, part of what's doing that, which is nice. So any questions? Kind of went through it fast.
A couple. Anyone else have any questions?
No.
Okay. Eric, I know you go through this before in the last year's budget. We went through this, but if you could just kind of rewind just a little bit on the sewer line maintenance, okay? Sewer repair and those two lines you mentioned, water distribution maintenance. Can you just kind of help us walk through the projected actual number for 2023, the budget, and then how you get to this budget? Like what's going in the increase from 75 to 125?
Sure. So that was,
And for both of those, they both have substantial increases off of the actual and the budget number. So I think there's some items you could probably help us understand what's in there.
sure, on the sewer side, that's the actual sanitary sewer rehab project that bid last month, or I think the month before.
June 1st.
Yeah, June. I reported on that was going forward. That's a multi-district project. Your share is that main body of that increase right there. Overall, what we do is, I think we look at what a 6-year review of the last 6 years of maintenance on those items, whether it's water line, whether it's service line repairs, or whether it's distribution line repairs. And we look at that, we take out the outliers because there were some when Tachus was here and a few other things. We'll take those outliers out. And then we just look at the system and say, well, you know, is there a trend? Should we be more aggressive with, we think there's going to be more distribution breaks? Do we think that we're going to have more service line breaks? In this case, there's, I think, some minor increases, but nothing substantial where we said, this is a thing that we have to increase for that reason. Those two items were because of projects. So we kind of normalized that from the last few years and then put the budget in. It's usually, I don't know if there was an across the board increase of a few percentage points, maybe 3 to 5 overall, because it's just a guess. That's the problem, is we know how many we fixed last year and the last, 6 years or so. We don't know how many are gonna break next year. So that's kind of an estimate.
And then the admin fee change, can you kind of go through that a little bit?
Sure, the admin fee, most of the admin decrease fee is really due to the changing salaries, removing Jim. There was a doubling effect of that last year with he and I. And then we removed, if you recall, I think we talked about this at the board level. We are moving forward with the software change. And so with that, we have an estimated position decrease because we believe that through the efficiencies gained with the software that we can do this. So we've actually put that in motion right now. We're testing it. We haven't started the changeover to the software to start working with the parallel build right now yet. That may tax us a little bit with personnel, but if we can get through that, we believe when we get on the other side that, so there's those two positions basically that are pulled off of the admin fee that are the main cause of that decrease.
Most of those answers, I just wanted to kind of hear it again.
Sure.
Okay.
This is my first time doing it too.
Yeah.
It's been great to understand how this all goes together. And I will say, I've told every director, every MUD so far, that we think that it would be important for all the MUDs, and they've all been very open to this, is as we're getting into a more aging system, and more breaks are going to start happening at some point, whether it's tomorrow or 5 years from now or whatever. I mentioned that we'd like to get our surpluses up a little bit. We'd like to work that into a better, because that really is when the bumps in the night happen, you're able to respond and do those. Because when they do happen unannounced, they're usually a lot more expensive than when we could plan for them. And so we're wanting to do maybe a 5-year budget look. But in order to do that, we don't have a 5-year CIP. So what I'm proposing to all of the MUDs is that we really look at a 5 or even a 10-year capital improvement plan on the WWA side to look at your water, sewer, and your drainage facilities to see if there's anything that we need to put in the budget going forward. That way, when we come to tax setting time and when we come to rate setting time, we can identify, okay, what are the expenses that we're gonna need, and can we pay for them out of cash? Or we're gonna have to do bonds or whatever the case may be, depends on the magnitude usually, but if we can incrementally start building up our reserves, it gives us a better chance that if we do have some of those planned expenditures on a CIP, then we don't have to go out for bonds, or we don't have to do some of the rate things and whatever. So, something that I think is a good idea.
Okay.
Last part of the program is that, that went into the budget, is for the first time ever, Woodlands Water Agency did a rate study, a retail rate study, water and sewer rate study. Have not increased your water rates, retail water rates, since 2014. So it's been a while since we've even looked at it. I think we look at it annually, but there hasn't been an increase since then. This year, we hired a consultant to help us do that. We hired Nelisa Hedden, who's in the room today, and wanted to give her an opportunity to kind of explain what the process was to go through the water and sewer retail rate study that we did. It's an enormous spreadsheet,
Quite a package.
700-page spreadsheet that went into the processing of it. The executive summary is about 90 pages, which is on the Google Drive if you want to read that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work went into it. It was very in-depth, very informative, good learning curve for us as well, just to learn the process. So with that, Nelisa.
Good evening. I'm Nelisa Hedden. I am a water and wastewater rate consultant. So I get to travel around the state and increase everybody's water rates. Everybody loves to see me coming. Being said, I have the pleasure of working with your staff on conducting a water wastewater rate study for all 10 of the districts with Woodlands Water. I wanted to give you kind of a 50,000-foot view of the overall process that we go through in establishing the rates, so you know what's in there. We use a 4-step process, and the first step in the process is to establish what we call revenue requirements. Our revenue requirements are essentially the revenue we need to recover from your water and wastewater rate structure to meet it. To do that and to establish that, we start off with your 2024 budget as a starting point, and then we make some adjustments. There are a couple adjustments that are important to understand. The first is with regard to your repair and maintenance. This year you have a project that's not a typical project, so it bumped that number up as we just discussed. Because of that, we looked at a 6-year historical period and we took an average. So the budget number's in there, but it's only averaged out at 1/6 of the total that we put in to try to normalize that. It's important to understand that because in years like this year, where you've got a more expensive project, you might under recover, and then in the next year you might over recover. But the goal is to kind of get you even with regard to that. The second adjustment in there is with your reserves. As Eric mentioned, the goal is to have a 9 to 12 month reserve. This district does not have that yet. So what we did was we put in a goal for 9 months. And we added to that revenue requirement some additional revenues each year so that within the next 5 years, you can build that reserve up to a 9-month goal. It's important to understand why we would do that in looking at reserves. First thing with regard to reserve funds is we need some cushion in there just to absorb weather. If it rained a lot this summer and you didn't sell hardly any water, you could be in a revenue shortfall period. And so we want to just have some cushion in there just for weather fluctuations. And the second reason is with regard to repairs and maintenance, unforeseen things. If something, you have a catastrophic large break, we want to make sure you have cash to go in and repair it immediately and you're not in a crunch for money to get those things taken care of. Right now, that's what's in the revenue requirements. In the future, as Eric mentioned, ultimately the goal is to get to a capital improvement plan. What we would recommend is you go in and perform a plan that looks at the next 5 to 10 year period of time and identifies what infrastructure you need to look at repairs, maintenance, rehabilitation, replacement, and start planning for that today. What that looks like is we identify what the projects are, how much they're gonna cost, and when you anticipate needing to do those projects. Usually you would prioritize the more dire issues first and go on from there. Once we have that CIP, we can come back and put in some funding plan for that and identify how much of your reserves are you gonna spend down and how much do we need to adjust rates? Do we need to issue debt, et cetera? That's set for this year. Again, we don't have that CIP in there. We just have kind of the 5-year average cost of repairs for, 6 years. After we've done that and established your revenue targets, if you will, the next step in the process is to perform a methodology called the base extra capacity methodology, which is described by the American Water Works Association. To understand this methodology, we first have to recognize how a water utility is built. We built our water utilities with extra capacity to handle times of peak demand. Everything from your plant infrastructure, your water supplies, to your transmission distribution lines, they're all sized to handle this time of peak demand. On average, it comes out to about twice the capacity that your average demands. Well, there's a cost impact to doing that. And what the base extra capacity does is allows us to identify what that cost is. So we put costs into 3 categories. The first cost that we categorize is base cost of service. This is if we got to live in a bubble world, we never had to worry about peaking. This is our theoretical cost of what it would cost to provide service. The second category is extra capacity costs. This is the cost of meeting those peaking demands on the system. The third category are customer costs. This is really your billing function, your customer service agents, et cetera. Once we have our costs into those 3 categories, we go to the third step, which is allocating those costs to our customers, looking at their pro rata share of the demands on the system. So our base costs of service are allocated to customer classes, and we use 3 classes of customers: commercial, residential, and irrigation. We allocate the base cost of service, looking at each customer class's average daily demands on the system, because that's what that cost is associated with. For our extra capacity costs, we allocate that based off of historical peaking for each class of customers. And the final category is customer costs, just the pro rata share of the total customer count. Once we've done that, we now have a revenue target from each class of customer, and then we design rates. You've been provided with a handout that gives you the recommended rates as well as the impact on an average customer. Those are the rates that we would recommend to achieve the revenue requirements that we've looked at. I do have to emphasize that this is a starting point until we have that capital improvement plan. We'll refine that as you go forward. But for today, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I also want to point out, when you're communicating and working with your customers to understand all of this, the biggest thing is putting climate change rates in 9 years. In the inflationary environment we've been in the last couple of years, that's quite frankly absolutely remarkable and something for this district to be very proud of. And so when we talk about the increase that's being proposed, we have to say, well, if you average it out over a 9-year period of time, it's actually a very reasonable increase. That said, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So what is the big unique selling point for me to be able to tell my constituents that we're having this and saying that, well, we haven't had an increase over the past 9 years? That's not going to fly. What else we got?
Well, you have that this district is experiencing the same inflation that everybody else is in terms of personnel and supplies that everybody else is. The reason why it costs more by groceries than it did 3 years ago. Secondly, that you're building your reserves so that if something bad happens, you're prepared to address it. Those are the 2 main issues. And then the third is you did have a slight increase in your SJRA water rates that flow through. And so once you put all of that into the puzzle, those are the 3 main driving forces.
Okay.
So we have a situation, obviously with SJRAs kind of also part of our system, a little different. We don't really see that in all that infrastructure doesn't come through in a typical way with bonds directly to us, right? It's all coming through the water rate. Does that affect how you did any of this, or most municipalities the same way?
Most municipalities are the same way. But districts are a little different because if you had issued through your bonds yourself, you could then have a tax rate associated with your debt. So that's a little bit different. So we put all of the pass-through costs from SJRA go into the water rate. Then on your M&O tax, we back out what your stormwater and drainage costs are. We back that out of that. And then there is a balance left that can offset what you need to get out of your water and sewer rates. So that's kind of the only difference there. At the end of the day, you're still a net zero gain. You've got to recover the cost, and it's whether you recover it from taxes or water rates.
The reserve we're gonna build, is not going to pay for a lot of capital. Right? So I wouldn't want the message to get too much. Yeah, we're building a cash reserve to do big replacements, big programs.
Because we got big programs coming up
Yeah,
and that's what they're gonna
yeah.
take.
So I think, right, yeah, that could be. Yeah, in an environment we are already going to be handling capital improvements in a different methodology. That's yet to come. Yeah, but systems aging, bigger breaks may occur. We need to have some more reserves to pay for the larger items. And we're getting ready for that. Okay.
What are our reserves now? The goal is to get to 9 months and 5 years. Is that right?
If we can, sure.
And what kind of reserve do we have now? How many months?
That's the bottom of that sheet.
Yeah, it would be projected, it'd be projected that at the end of the year, we'd be at 7.7. So we start the year at 6.5 or 5.6, and these rates help us start growing that throughout the year, even with those two bigger projects in it, including the Bear Branch, which is also in there. You have almost $1 million worth of bigger projects between Bear Branch and the water and sewer projects. And those won't be there next year. Those will go away, which will be good. Don't know if there'll be something else, but.
Do most MUDs have a 12-month reserve? And you do this a lot, right? So.
Yes, so we used to have 12 months is a kind of a standard. However, that you are a little bit unique because you don't have the mechanical pieces of it. So the water plant and all the mechanical stuff that tends to really throw wrenches in things, you're just worried about line breaks. And so you can get away with a 9-month reserve just because the cost and the frequency of those types of unforeseen issues are going to be less than had you owned your own mechanical construction.
Water well goes down, it's 300,000 to start, just to pull the equipment and check it out and fix it.
And a
You
new
got a
well's
booster pump,
$7 million,
$30,000 to $50,000 a pop. I mean, those are big tick now. Granted, if we had a 15-foot deep sanitary under a road at night collapse, like you see on the news sometimes, could be $100,000 fix or more. That's the type of more likely that we would have to deal with just your water, sewer, and drainage pipes and ditches.
So just out of curiosity here, if there was like one of these big collapses, like, what you see in other cities where, the roads are out of service and everything else, do you have like disaster insurance and that covers those kind of catastrophic things, or you just eat all the cost of that up?
The districts do carry insurance.
Because there's these one-time, act of God events, that it's just put us out of service and it's just not anything that we do. You would think there would be big liability insurance on this. Just asking.
Liability insurance, but insurance to cover the property is a different.
Well, right. But in this particular case, giant pipe underneath a road collapses and now the roads are out of service and everything else in that. And the $300,000 to just, fix a well or drill a well and whatever, something big like that. Do we carry insurance for something like that? No, if that happened, we would eat it.
I've never seen a utility insurance like that that would cover that or that would actually pay?
Didn't know, was just asking.
Great question. It was
Yeah.
great. It would make
Yeah.
everybody's life easier, but no.
Yeah,
Have the mechanical, but on the mechanical side, you would, you could file, if there was a lightning strike or
Yeah.
some kind of, or vandalism or something at a plant. You don't have that.
right,
Those are managed by SGRA.
right.
If you had that, I've seen districts have that and file against their insurance, but for what
Right.
you're describing,
Yeah, yeah,
for the things we deal with.
right.
no.
No. Okay, cool. All right.
Sorry, one more. Oh, okay. So the different MUDs have kind of a different approach to this. So you do this at a per MUD basis, right?
Yes, so we looked at the Woodlands Water, we looked at each MUD individually, we did your own analysis. Then there was a goal to have as many MUDs as possible on the same rate structure. And so for those MUDs, we had to round to get to a similar rate structure. We did have a couple MUDs, including you, that was significantly different than the others, so we had to put you on your own rate tier.
How different?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Eight are on the same,
Yes, sorry.
46,
Yeah.
36 are different. They have different rates,
Yeah.
higher.
But you all are-
But you were in as part of that.
Yeah, so that's what I saw, and I was glad that we weren't in that.
Yeah.
Some outliers with higher numbers, and it'd be an outlier with a smaller number might be good. What's driving their difference, just real quickly, is it more tabs with less volume or different, maybe more commercial volume and less residential? Do you, just real quickly?
Both of them. Significant shortfalls in their reserves, as in their 2 to 3 month range.
Okay.
And 2 is more costly repairs, historical repairs that are driving that repair average up.
And a tax rate that is extraordinarily low,
Yes.
which we can't do much about because of recent legislation that won't let you gain more than, they're both considered developed districts, which means you can't gain more than 3.5% revenue over last year's revenue.
Yeah.
So,
aren't we developed?
Yeah.
so you're capped.
We are.
Which handcuffs a lot of districts, particularly the older, more aging districts that would have a lower tax rate and higher infrastructure maintenance. That's the perfect storm problem for that type of district, for that legislation. Unfortunately.
Okay.
You're not there.
And it looks like your model, you go up and then you just hold it flat in most of all these cases, right? And that's just to
build those reserves. And so what happens is in the early year, you're building more reserve. And then as time goes on, you're building a little less reserve each year, which is being replaced by inflation.
So we shouldn't think that these rates in the future are going to stay where they are.
That's
All right. This just makes the math work.
Yes.
So you just best guess what you thought inflation was
Back
gonna
into it
do.
to cover.
So we use
Yeah.
your budget.
Yeah.
And these rates are really addressing your 2024 budget.
Yeah.
That's where we're
Yeah.
starting. And then once we have that CIP plan, we did put it together at the model, but once we have that CIP plan, we can come in and say, okay, now what do we have to replace? What do we need to have additional funding for? That's beyond what your average repair cost is.
And now that the model is built, we can go in, once we have the CIP data, we can go in each year, tweak, look at it. I'm not sure if 2031 or 32 is the best time to do your rates next time. Another 9 years, I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend that necessarily. And then there's different philosophies on how you might go about doing increases. Little ones every year or every few years do, a moderate one. And I'd say, that you're at about 6%. That's not, over 9 years, that's pretty tremendous. You're not even a percent a year increase from where your last rates were in 2014. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Last question, sorry. Metro Mud, right? So the one that picks up kind of all the commercial growth. We also have a wastewater treatment plant project that has growth built into it, that we're going to grow from this amount of demand and use to this amount. It's going up. I think in your analysis, we assume we're all built out. But is that the same for the metro? Are you kind of aligned with Howard Hughes is telling us that they have growth? But it looks like everything's being held flat or not so maybe in the commercials?
To be conservative, until we know what that growth will look like and what they're actually going to use from a financial perspective. So when we're designing things from an engineering perspective, they have to be aggressive and they have to plan for the worst case scenario, because if there's only one house on the street, you still have to have a water line to that house. From a financial perspective, we don't want to plan on revenue that may not be there, because we could see you upside down and having problems. So for right now, we left the growth constant because we didn't see any historical change materially. If that changes and we get into redevelopment and we see those demands come in, that's when you come in and continue to look at it.
Typically, how long, if a developer, you know that they're forecasting is it a couple of years out for you to start to build some of that in the budget? What is there a historical?
So first of all, God bless developers, I love them, but we take what they say with a grain of salt, because I want to see houses on the ground using water or businesses on the ground. But when we do, yeah, again, engineers have to take them seriously because we've got to have that water there. But when we look at it, we want to see, we would look for building permits coming in. That's what I would look for, is once those building permits start rolling through, then that gives us okay, this is really gonna happen, and we can put some projections in play of what that would look like.
Those permits are a couple years out. What I'm getting to is how much time do we have to adjust?
Right.
The tax
So,
rate.
usually a couple years out, and then within those permits, we've got to recognize if it's new development or redevelopment. Because if it's redevelopment, we're just replacing an old restaurant with a new restaurant versus redevelop or new development. And so we've got to examine that as well.
It could have been contemplated that it was an apartment complex and then it ended up being a commercial thing or vice versa. That has huge swings that we can't bank on until, and the developer doesn't even know what's going to be there too. So they might have it marketed. Generally based on the size of the property, you could do some educated guesses on what it might be. It's not big enough to be a single family, or it's, too small to be an apartment, or whatever the case may be. So you can do some guesses, but even they're just trying to estimate what they think could go there, and to make sure while they're estimating, making sure that there is enough capacity in case it's the other thing that's higher, just until it's developing, or in the feasibility stage, you don't know what it's going to be.
And then one question about the reserves. So what's a scenario? What would happen if things happened and there wasn't enough money in the reserves? What's the process, the scramble? Like what needs to be done in that case? So what if the reserves aren't built up and you run out of money? How do you quickly react?
Directors have to pay. We didn't tell you that.
It's like a nonprofit. The board members.
Sorry, Gary. I thought we told that.
We have to do some creative things quickly. You can't create money overnight. If you had bonding capacity, maybe we could do scramble and do something there. You could probably take out loans.
Bond authorized, that's not been issued yet, so
You do not.
do not. Tax bonds, right? If you look at a revenue bond, it would be tough circumstances for sure.
Yeah. And not quick.
There's no parent to make a cash call to. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, well.
that's maybe it's.
Can you Venmo my account?
Something into a fee into the bill.
Yeah.
You'd have to figure out how we would capture it.
Right.
Yeah.
I would strongly discourage getting in that situation, because if you had to go out for money, I can tell you your bond rating would be in the toilet because you wouldn't have any reserves.
That's a good point.
You really would get hit hard.
Mm.
It would not be.
And then you'd have a real bad rate the next time you do need it. So.
Any other questions? This is very instructive, very educational. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Cool.
Nothing to approve tonight. We'll approve it next month. If you do come up with something, let me know. And
Okay.
it'll probably be tweaked a little bit throughout the next 30 days, and we'll submit the final next month.
All done, all done. All right. That was item 4. Review and act on the, I'm sorry, I'm gonna back on this. Back to item 9, receive the financial advisor's recommendation concerning district's proposed rate, which we just did. No, sorry, it's you, sorry.
That was in the
Yeah.
budget, you saw what
Right.
your was in that.
There it is. Yes, thank you. Okay.
About
That service side of things too. Good evening, Nick Wood with Baird. Happy to be here tonight to talk to you all about your 2023 tax rate and our proposed recommendation for this tax year. Our recommendation starts on page 18 of your board packet. I hope you all have a chance to look it over. But before we look into the numbers and the recommendation, just let's quickly review the two-step process that we go through each and every year to set our tax rate. Tonight on the agenda is step 1, where we do the recommendation, but act only to determine the total rate that goes into our notice of public hearing. Between this meeting and next meeting, that notice of public hearing is published. And step 2, second meeting, next month's meeting, we conduct the public hearing and levy the tax rate for the year. So while we're going to discuss the total tax rate and the 2 components that we're proposing to make up that total, what's most important for tonight is the total, because that's the number that goes into the notice of public hearing. And the number that goes into the notice of public hearing is the maximum that we can levy once we do have step 2 and that meeting next month where we do levy the tax. So with that said, let's look at the recommendation. What starts this process every year, we've got new 2023 values from the Montgomery Central Appraisal District. And those values, which include a conservative estimate of the amount of value for properties that remain to protest as of certification. We're showing a 2023 net taxable value for the district, $2,939,075,571. That 2023 value represents an increase over last year's value, your 2022 value of about 9.69%, or an increase of about $260 million. On last year's value, we levied a total tax rate of 19.5098 cents. And of that total, 10.2598 cents went to your maintenance and operations tax rate for your budget. And the remainder, 9.25 cents went to debt service. This year, we're proposing a reduction in the total tax rate and a reduction on each of the 2 components. We're proposing a total tax rate for 2023 of 17.5991 cents. Of that total, we're proposing the M&O tax rate be 9.5991 cents, and the remainder debt service be 8 cents. So on the total rate, it's about a 1.91 cent reduction. On the M&O side, it's a reduction of about 0.66 cents. And then on the debt service side, we're actually to make a pretty healthy reduction of 1.25 cents. So you'll see, reduction in total rate, but despite, that, there's an increase in overall value. And with, the majority of the reduction coming off your debt service side, we have a good amount of maintenance revenue that we saw in the budget, and that, along with other revenues and our budgeted expenditures, allow for that increase in reserves that Eric was talking about. I couldn't agree more. Great to have 9 months of reserves, and the budget's that we're looking at, or just looked at, would go some way to achieve that. So with that service cash flow that we look at each year, in update with our new values and our new remaining debt service obligations. The goal here is more or less to, equivocate and determine the necessary debt service tax rate based on our most recent taxable value to generate the tax revenues that we need to make our debt service payments during this upcoming year. And at the end of the year, to have a reasonable amount of balance in the debt service fund in the event, we have to pull on that for next year's payment. So as you can see, if you look towards the center of the cash flow there, you'll see the new, on the second row, our new 2023 taxable value, the 2.9 billion, 8 cents on that value, and 99% tax collections generates about $2.3 million in tax revenue to make debt service payments. Under the current debt service column, second row again, you'll notice we have $2.176 million in total principal and interest payments during calendar 2024. So the 8 cents is a little above what we have to pay this year. We would build up our debt service fund balance a little bit year over year, but as you can see there, the ending balance of 868,000, of course, is projected, is equal to 62% of the following year's debt service requirements, which are $1.38 million. So I like that 62% coverage. That's really what we're targeting when we put together these cash flows, is that coverage amount at the end of the year. And so the 8 cents, gets us to a good ending balance and coverages that I'd like to see. So that's the rationale behind the 8 cent recommendation for 2023. Below the cash flow, there are 3 boxes. Top box has some information about the proposed M&O rate for 2023 and our M&O rate last year. You'll see the top row of the top box, 2022 M&O rate was 10.2598 cents. That rate at last year's value, 99% tax collections, generated about $2.72 million of revenue for your budget. This year, next row there, the proposed 2023 M&O tax rate of 9.5991 cents. Again, 99% tax collections, but of course, on this year's value, generated just a bit more this year, 2.793 million for a budget. And again, as I mentioned, that's what's in our budget. We've got other revenues, water, sewer, rate increases. But yeah, I really do like the looks of that $900,000 plus surplus and the additional coverage that has on the operating side of things. So, but yeah, it's a reduction in rate, but generally an equal amount of maintenance tax revenue from last year. The middle box of the 3 here, you'll kind of see really what was our target for the total proposed rate this year. Last year's average homestead value was $332,853. That value at last year's rate equated to a tax bill for the average homestead of $649. This year, the average homestead value has gone up, which it has everywhere. It's up about $35,000 or 10% from last year, but with a proposed decrease in total rate, the average tax bill for the average homesteads is the same, right? So this is really the target. We targeted a total proposed tax rate for 2023 that will keep the tax bill for average homesteads the same from last year. And so if you were, discussing, some key points about, a water and sewer rate increase, you might also mention that, well, your tax bill hadn't gone up. So that might be helpful in that conversation. So yeah, it's the equalization of taxable year over year is what the reasoning behind our proposed recommendation. And of course, that the M&O tax rate behind that total, it will give us a good amount of revenue for our budget, and the debt service side is healthy. So the bottom box of the 3 gives some information about some of the calculations that we have to perform under the water code as a result of Senate Bill 2, property tax reform that was passed in 2019, came into effect in 2020. We are a developed district, as was discussed earlier. And generally speaking, if you are a developed district, the highest tax rate that you can adopt without having an election to get approval for a higher rate is the tax rate that generates a 3.5% increase on the tax bill for the average homestead. While proposed tax rate generates a 0% increase in the tax bill for the average homestead. So we don't have any concerns, as far as exceeding any of those limitations that are in the water code from that property tax reform. But yeah, that is the overall recommendation. Again, I think the gives you a flat tax bill for homesteads and a good amount of maintenance tax revenue to build up the reserves, and we're healthy on the debt service side too. So happy to answer any questions.
The 62% target coverage, which you mentioned, where does that number come from? Is that?
So
you said you like it, which that works for me, but what else?
Yeah, it
Gets us there.
And a bare minimum there, I would say, is 25%. And I'm also kind of thinking about what we have going forward, right? So you notice that your debt service obligations go down, right? So this is the last year we have $2+ million. After this, they go around to 1.4 million. So I just kind of, we have some additional room to reduce the tax rate on the debt service side. And so I generally like the idea of kind of building up that reserve, for that eventual reduction. But there's not, a perfect science to it, but 32% at the end of this year, in my mind, that's a little lower than where I'd like to see it. And, we can achieve 62% while lowering the overall tax rate, keeping the tax bill for homesteads flat. And again, putting an relatively equal amount of maintenance tax revenue in your budget and generating some reserve. So it's it's not, again, a perfect science. I would say that 25% is the bare minimum, but, plus or minus 50, if we're looking at kind of half penny increments or so, you gotta decide somewhere, but 8% seemed like a nice, 8 cents to the 62% coverage seemed nice and healthy this year.
And the coverage goes up, actually. You're right. That
It
percent
does.
goes up.
It does.
Does that make sense when you're getting closer to the end of your payout? to have
No,
more
not
coverage?
necessarily. And, again, let's, focus on the 8 cents and, everything beyond that is for the same conversation that we'll have next year when we have new values and, new everything to consider. If we did not grow, or if our AB did not change at any point, through the life of this debt structure, I wouldn't keep it exactly at 5 cents. We wouldn't have an ending balance of $1 million for any further debt. We would, of course, lower that, but,
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, I did want to demonstrate that there is some additional, a reduction in the debt service taxes is likely going forward. That you'll have some additional tax rate that you could move over to management operations to build up those reserves, as we talked about, or we could lower the total tax rate or however you see fit. But for this year, I do think 8% or 8 cents is a good rate.
So next budget meeting, fast forward 12 months, we're likely gonna have to decide whether to allocate towards more of a reserve or drop the tax rate or both.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where we.
Okay, so the story for MUD 47 for all of our homeowners here is that basically we're keeping the rate the same. So this is a good thing, right?
No, you're dropping the rate.
Okay,
Dropping the
dropping, oh, yeah,
Percent.
yeah, got it.
But your value of your house went up,
Yes,
but your bill stayed the same.
bill stayed the same. Okay. How does this compare with all of the other MUDs in the area? Is it the same?
Yeah, been able to, have a flat homestead tax bill, and I don't think any instance. Maybe one other.
I mean, just like, you've got properties in MUD 67, for example, and, same thing over there, or do they have different situations and we just happen to be in a good position right now?
Real quick, if you bear with me.
Increase $47.
There we go.
Whoa,
Yeah.
okay.
A lot of them had, I would say all but one had a decrease in the rate.
But they're developing too,
Yeah.
and they get 8%,
Right.
you get 3.5. So
Right.
it's kind of a different
Right.
scenario.
But it is one thing that the general public doesn't see and doesn't understand. All they understand is this is the bill that I've got. Well, it's great that we've got a little bit of a decrease here in MUD 47,
Sure.
but I need to be careful not to be able to tell all of the people that I know in other MUDs, this is going to be a great year. I mean, so that's not really true. It's true of MUD 47, but would not be true of the other, could not be true of the other MUDs in the area. Okay.
Financial, and then there were certainly some tax rate recommendations that we made where there was, no question that.
Right.
A developed district had to levy the absolute maximum that they could under the statutes.
Right.
Some needed
The
to,
finances, there was just no question about
Right.
it.
some needed to go higher and they couldn't.
Yeah.
Because of financial, they needed more.
Right. But they were developed and they couldn't.
I
Okay.
think all but one lowered their rate. And just about all of them tried to create the surplus, maxed out as much as they could at the 3.5% to try to get as much surplus. And usually the bills were anywhere from, $5 a month to even less than that.
It really does vary.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
Right.
There wasn't anyone that had a massive increase in bill.
Tax bill for homesteads. Yeah, one yesterday, I think was Friday.
The 99% recovery, that matches our history. Is that right? Collection rates are. Have we ever had years where it was less than that or?
Depends on the number. But at the end of fiscal year, you're at 99%. Easy. I don't,
Consistent
Yeah.
about that
I don't.
history to draw on. Yeah. Okay. So 2029, the schedule says we pay everything off, right?
Correct.
That includes the last bond we did, the last 6 point some million. Was that just like a 7 or 8 year bond or something? I would have thought these were like 10-year bonds. I would have thought that one would have gone out to 31 or something, or 30. No. I guess it was 19, maybe. Was that done in 19?
For
2019?
for the,
We did a short maturity schedule. In 2020, we did a series of, this was $6.865 million bonds. The last principal payment was, in 2029, which is on our schedule here. And yeah, I think right there, I'm looking at the coupons. Lowest is 1.2%, highest is 2. Which those days we're still here, but,
Not if you bought one.
the ideal here, yeah, that,
Tell me.
it was a 5-year extension on your existing maturity structure.
Okay,
And
okay.
I think, we could afford all that principal with just that 5-year extension. And so, why cast it any longer? And therefore you'll make more interest payments and incur more interest
I
costs,
see.
if we didn't need to. So, as you can see here, we're dropping our debt service tax rate, and can do some more. Going
yeah.
forward. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank
But
you.
you're right, though. Generally, we do sell 25-year bonds.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. All right. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. All right, thank you. That's a good analysis. Appreciate that.
motion to publish that rate.
Oh, absolutely, yes. So do we have a motion to publish the proposed rate for a district?
I'll
Do we have a
second.
Second.
I'll
All in
second.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any object? None. Okay, motion passes. Thanks, Eric, for all that. Okay, so we're on to item 10.
Yep.
SJRA monthly division report.
Evening.
Hey,
I do not
Chris.
have anything under item number 10, but Dan and Connie do have a presentation under item number 11.
Right for that. Thank you.
Right, we're gonna do a presentation, so,
Oh, yeah.
so it's not to blind anybody, before I pull the paper away, make sure that y'all are.
There.
So does everybody have a copy of this? Is the presentation if you'd like one? And Dan, I believe you've got it.
Yeah, it should be 11 by 17 maps.
I'm ready to give it a shot. Use some studio time here. Oh. Here we go. Yeah, we're on. Hi. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for having us this lovely Thursday evening. For those of you that don't recall, I'm Connie Curtis, the Director of Technical and Operational Services with the San Jacinto River Authority. And my partner in crime here is Dan Hildebrandt, our Tech Services Manager. So we're here this month to talk to you all about AC water line replacement program and the condition-based asset management kind of idea. And we've got 4 different things we're going to talk about. If any of y'all have watched the trustees meeting, this is basically the same presentation. We took out a handful of slides because what we're going to do is ask for questions to be held till the end. That'll help us get through this. It's about a 20-minute presentation. And so we can get through it and then we can answer your questions as we're completed. So we got 4 things. A little bit of background to tell you where we've been and how we got where we are. Some in-depth conversation on condition-based asset management about the testings and different things like that. SJRA recommendations of what we think that we want to move forward with, and then the next steps that we're proposing. So Dan's going to take the first half and I'm going to take the second. So here you go.
Thank you. So quickly going through some project background. I want to start back in 2017, 2018 timeframe. This is when SJRA acknowledged that we are having aging infrastructure here in the Woodlands. So we took a proactive approach to start internally planning for that. Internally to our technical services department, along with the Woodlands Division staff, we started looking at the overall age of the system, the different line segments, the break history, what issues have we seen in the past in terms of either pipe installation, when those breaks occur, but also looking at it on a consequence of failure side too. So looking along those lines of where there are critical facilities to where if line breaks here, what's the consequence of failure, the potential for that. So that led us to that internal analysis of development of a 10-year project plan in 2018, which was the first project plan that we presented AC, the asbestos cement water line replacement projects. At that point in time, we internally estimated those using the best knowledge and data we had. And we estimated around $100 million for replacement of those AC water line segments. So moving forward, 2019, 2020, again, acknowledging that this is going to be a significant investment to the community. And so we had conversations with the audit committee and conversations with MUD on funding and financing and how do we plan for this. During that time frame, we did some internal adjustments to the cost estimates, really just based on some of the inflation at that point. Small increase up to around $109 million. So 2021, so some significant events here I want to point out. One is we initiated the design for Town Center Waterline project. That project's currently at a 90% final design. That one, with our analysis, was the highest priority. We also, again, acknowledging the size of this program to replace the AC lines, we wanted a third party to come in and assess our internal work that we were doing, both on the prioritization, the timing, and the cost. So we hired a third party consultant to come in and do a Woodlands Division 20-year CIP plan. Of that included the AC water lines. Results is the consultant recommended a 10-year AC water line replacement program. Using the best information they had on cost data at that time, they estimated those line segments to be around $149 million. And the overall cost for that third party to do that study for us was approximately $120,000 at that time. This is the handout that I gave you. So you do have an 11x17 map. This is really one of the other results of that study is 11 proposed segments of AC waterline projects, which is indicated on the map by the various colors. And overall, that's around 48 miles of water line. This, again, putting up here is just for reference, and we're going to come back to it when Connie takes over. But these are the 11 segments that were identified, and this is in the prioritized order, including data on the installation, original installation year, anticipated age of replacement, and just some general break data, very high level, just number of breaks since 2000 on that overall line segment. So first quarter of 2023, this is when we're going through the annual revision of our 10-year project plan. We've seen a lot of price escalation in the markets, both on materials, equipment, construction, et cetera, that we wanted to bring in another third-party consultant to help us relook at those cost estimates to get the best budget we could at that point in time. So we hired the consultant that's actually engaged with us on the Town Center Waterline. We felt they were most qualified due to their recent experience talking to a number of contractors, suppliers, vendors, doing other similar projects in the area that we felt they had the best cost data to help us re-estimate those costs. So that's where it went up to $200 million for the replacement of all the AC water lines. And that is what was included and presented to y'all in the April 10-year project plan from SGRA. And again, we had a 96% design on Town Center Waterline. So condition-based asset management discussion. So we're going to focus tonight on the asbestos cement water pipes, but essentially you can use this general approach for multiple different materials of water line or sewer line, et cetera. And sometime down the road, we're going to end up having to replace PVC lines. So, a condition-based asset management program could even be utilized for that. So since April 2023, we've been presented with and reviewed a number of peer-reviewed engineering journal articles. We've discussed condition-based asset management with a number of multiple national experts. Some of those have authored those engineering articles. Some have authored AWWA manuals for the procedures for an condition-based asset management program. We have discussed destructive and non-destructive testing approaches and technologies with a number of vendors, and also have discussed with other municipal entities within Texas here on how they handle large capital programs like this, and when they have to replace a significant portion of their water lines or something similar. So just a few, for example, City of Conroe, City of Baytown, Sugar Land, Austin, are just a couple, Lake Jackson's another one. So we have been trying to reach out and see what others are doing. So 4 main things that we're going to go through in the next couple slides: opportunistic sampling, both uncontrolled, controlled, destructive and non-destructive testing, and the overall engineering analysis. So opportunistic sampling, uncontrolled, what is that? That is when pipes break. So we have recently revised kind of our procedures and the data that we're collecting when pipes break. You know, we acknowledged in the past we've had holes in the data. You know, we are working to improve on that. So there is a multiple page form now and template that, you know, our staff is filling out when we have any sort of a break. You know, this is some technical data on, all right, what's the diameter of the water line? What's the material type? Did it break at a joint? Did it get hit by a contractor? Is it a natural break? But also other things to where what was any sort of downtime, or was there impacts to traffic or the roadway or adjacent private property? Collecting as much data as we can and inputting that into our asset management software, also marking all the locations diligently in our GIS software. One thing we've talked about moving forward to even be more proactive is taking any of those samples of the pipe where it's broken, and you could send that off for laboratory testing or the destructive testing and gain additional data that way. So on the controlled opportunistic sampling, you know, a couple examples. One would be the town center water line, which we've talked a lot about. That's approximately 3 miles of AC water line. If we were to proceed with the construction of that project, we would have opportunities in open pits to where we could remove sections of that line and send it off for further destructive testing to get additional data. One that's talked about a little less is Harper's Landing water line extension. Just to bring you up to speed on this project, this has been in our 10-year project plan for a number of years now. It's fully R&R funded. We are currently at 100% final design and looking to put that out for proposals, construction proposals in the next few months. It is a smaller project, a construction estimate around like $300,000. But this is a new water line to create essentially a redundant loop in our system over east of 45 Trade Center Parkway. It's in MUD 39. But what the opportunity is there is essentially we will be tapping into an AC water line with that new line to create the loop. And we would have an opportunity to pull a sample of the AC pipe there to send it off for further testing. That AC pipeline is part of one of the 11 segments that is identified for future replacement down the road. So destructive testing, we would have to shut down sections of the water line. There would have to be temporary water service above ground to maintain service to our customers. We'd recommend excavating down, removing a joint-to-joint section of the pipe around 10 to 13 feet. We would bring in experts to study the soil, the embedment, the construction around the pipe, and then sending it off to certified labs to actually test the pipe. When we say testing, that is a kind of a series of tests that range from chemical tests to actually physical tests of crushing the pipe, ultimately going through those to determine, you know, remaining wall thickness, strength, hardness, as they're softening or degrading of the internal, external portions of that pipe. On the non-destructive side, again, there's a number of technologies out there. The most common one that's been brought to us is an acoustical testing method. With that, you would still be shutting down a segment of the pipe. Based on our knowledge, the max distance you can run that is 700 feet at a time. But you would essentially have to connect those sensors to the pipe, potentially being able to use some hydrants if available in the right distance. But you know, our assumption is you're going to be digging down, tapping into the pipe to run those tests. It's sending a wave through the pipe and essentially measuring the velocity of that, which transitions back to an average thickness and average degradation of that pipe over that overall length, 700 feet. So pros and cons to non-destructive, pros and cons to destructive. Non-destructive, you're getting an average result over a distance to where could be skewed if you got one section of really bad pipe in there and the rest might be fine. On the destructive side, you're taking one very distinct sample at one location where is that representative or not of a larger segment? So engineering analysis, this is both the front end and the back end. On the front end, we would need an expert to come in and help us set up this program. How much do we test? Where do we test? What types of tests do we run? We would need help on that. On the back end, we're going to gather all this additional data. What do we do with it? How do we analyze it? How does that help us? One of the more common ones is the predictive modeling softwares that could be utilized and input that data. We no longer just have kind of two metrics of the overall age of the pipe and the break history. You're going to have all this additional data to where, how do you prioritize those metrics or weight them? Is there different trigger points that are put in place that would trigger replacement of a pipe segment? So all that has to be run through, and we would need some engineering help and analysis to help us reprioritize a project plan and a schedule for when the pipes would need to be replaced. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Connie to talk a little bit more about how much testing and some recommendations.
Right. Thanks, Dan. So you heard us talk about national experts that we've talked to, and we're trying to figure out how to create a budget for this. And, looking at it, you've got to kind of corral all the information and figure out how many of them to do and, how often. So talking to some of those national experts, they gave us a rule of thumb for the destructive testing, which is 1 sample per mile. And so if you take out town center, excuse me, which is about 3 miles, that's 45 miles of pipe that's left. So that'd be 45 total locations. So what that could look like, so don't hold me to where the red dots are, but this is roughly 45 red dots across the Woodlands. Wanting to note that town center is this green area down here. So that has no red dots, but 45 red dots across the Woodlands. For non-destructive testing, it's less straightforward. There's not really a good rule of thumb. Pull town center out based on what the experts have kind of looked at our system and said they felt like 25 miles of the 45 miles would be a good just basic starting point of the maximum of that we would want to do. These black squiggles is about 25 miles. Once again, schematic purposes, please don't hold me to that this is where we're going to go test, but this would kind of show you what it could look like. Lastly, the engineering analysis, we're going to have that for anything that we do, as Dan noted on the front and the end. We're going to need some help. So what is our recommendation to do? When you talk to these national experts, they'll tell you absolutely engineering analysis is necessary. So that's part of our recommendation. But some of them will say, go do destructive testing first. And then some will say, go do non-destructive testing first. Some will say, lean completely on non-destructive testing and don't do any destructive testing. So how do you find a happy medium? And really, we said, all right, let's look at the budgets of how much everything costs. And half destructive, 23 holes, half non-destructive, 13 miles seems to be a happy medium for us to create a budget for. So in the end, when we get some help on this, it may not be those numbers, but this at least gives us a place to start. And then the result of all of that is a prioritized and scheduled plan. Okay, so if you look, this is once again, last time for this map, you may have some areas that are just red dots, so just destructive. You may have some areas that are just black squiggles, so just non-destructive, and then you may have some areas that have both, and that consultant will help us figure out where that needs to be across the system. This is the same chart that Dan highlighted earlier that's from the 2021-2022 study that was done by the consultant that helped us. So this was never intended to be a stagnant document. So every year you're going to have a new number of breaks that's added to this. And so if we started to see at any point in time something change, for instance, if the Mill Bend area all of a sudden went from 1 to 7 or 8, we'd obviously know there's something wrong and we maybe need to prioritize that and move it up. So what this study is going to do is give us more data that will help us to reprioritize this without having to wait for something to break, essentially. And so what that could mean is that this replacement year may change. It could shift up because we find some major problems, or it could shift out because everything seems to be okay. Additionally, the segments may change of where they are, but essentially this is a great prioritized project plan from a desktop study. We're moving more into truly looking at an asset base based on better information. So there's an asterisk up here, and I've kind of already hit on that, but we need a consultant, right? So we would have to have an RFQ to do 3 things. We need a consulting engineer, we need a contractor to help us dig holes and do the temporary water, and then we need a testing lab. So those are 3 professionals that we're going to have to go get RFQs to get their services. to do this plan appropriately. How long is it gonna take and how much is it gonna cost? The best that we can estimate, just once again, kind of being conservative, is 4 years. So if we were to start hypothetically in January 2024, it'll take us until January 2028 to have that completed chart back. Now, can we start by testing some of those more prioritized projects earlier and getting some data? Absolutely. But to get all of it taken care of and prioritized, it'll take us probably about 4 years. Maybe sooner if we choose to do less, but for now, that's the best number that we've got. And it's going to be a budget of $3.5 million. That includes the engineering analysis, front and back end, the contractors to excavate, geotechnical boring, destructive and non-destructive testing. So that's the number that we've got. The next steps. So SRA is definitely committed to continuing to gather data better when there's future line breaks. So that opportunistic testing of uncontrolled, we'll do better. So we're committed to that. Number two, we're here this month to present to the MUDs about condition-based asset management. And then this third one, we left the statement the same as it was presented to the trustees, but we want to note that it's changed a little based on some direction from the trustees. So instead of at the September MUD meetings, we're going to change that to at the October MUD meetings, the MUDs will consider and take action on a bond. So what we want to use September for is an opportunity for you all to take this information, think about it, and come back and ask us questions so that then you can maybe be more prepared for October. And the $25 million bond breakdown of what we're asking for is construction of town center. And that will include opportunistic testing. So you've already got those pits that are going to be opened. This project will start construction in 2025. So it's maybe a little bit further out than 2024, but you're already going to have the holes. No need to go get ahead of yourself and test early. We'll do that. That's $15.5 million for that line to be constructed. Then we're proposing B and C are the next two prioritized lines and starting the preliminary engineering for those two. So the North Town Center Grogan's Mill is the next one in the town center area, and the Panther Creek is often kind of a little different area of the woodlands, but those are the next two prioritized. And what we're proposing to do is adding in D of the condition-based assessment. Many of the municipalities that we talk to across the state, if they do asset-based management, they don't necessarily stop with the projects that they're moving forward with. They go gather data and then reprioritize as they move. So we're proposing to kind of do two parallel tracks of move forward with town center, move forward with the next preliminary engineering, and then at the same time, come gather more data and reprioritize as you get better information. And so that's the total with the cap I that's in there at the end for $2 million on the bonds. That is up to $25 million. That is our presentation. I'm going to stop there. We have one slide that says questions, but nobody wants to see that. So we're going to stop there. And what questions do y'all have for us? If y'all got this in front of you, we can turn this off and turn the lights back on. It just depends on if y'all want me to flip around. Looks like
I got a question.
yes, sir.
If you, the $3.5 million, things are fantastic. The pipe looks great. There, maybe we don't test, we don't keep spending money on it. Are you able to do that?
I think that the challenge with any of this, honestly, is, and this is really where we need experts, right? And so Dan and I are not experts in asset management, but the challenge that you have with almost any pipe materials is the construction of it. So the non-destructive will tell us some things about the acoustics of it. The destructive, one of the reasons we're doing 10 to 13 feet, because one joint of pipe is typically 13 feet in this pipe material. If you don't see what's happening at the joints, then you're really not getting a good idea, because this pipe doesn't necessarily typically fail along the pipe. It's going to fail at the joints. And so, yes, we can go through, and if we find that town center is good, then that's good data. But does it mean that Panther Creek is okay too? Different contractors install things different ways. We kind of need to continue to search and make sure that we're not going to find problems.
Okay.
So that's part of the difficult thing, but that's what we've understood from the
So when you go out to RFQ, you're committing to the vendors, you're going to spend the $3.5 million.
Not necessarily. So to me, that's kind of a high end. And so if we can come up with a plan that's less than that, we would do that. And it may be a phased kind of situation too, where we pay engineering up front and figure out some front end stuff to figure out what the plan is. And so that piece of it, this is more of just when, from a budget perspective, we would commit not to spend more than $3.5 million, but how that kind of phases in is something that we would figure out.
So
You know, the town center, is there a history of, I watched the water. But is there a, like, why not do a test on that for is it $350,000 per test? And then, like, what is it a foregone conclusion that it's bad, it needs replaced, or? Like, I know there's an outage.
We've had some failures,
Okay.
right? We've had some leaks along the line and some things that have had to be repaired. And our system is, I'm gonna call it a quasi-transmission system. It's not a complete transmission system, meaning that there is some looping that occurs. The transmission system is really just moving water from one point to another. So there is some looping. Willis Water loops it. So there's some redundancy in the system, but not a ton. There are some different ways and different risks. And so when you look at it, the risks of a failure in that town center area is really impactful. And so you've got, some medical places down there, you've got a lot of commercial that's impactful. So it's not just, the pipeline failing in a couple of places can be really catastrophic if you're not careful. What the AC pipeline does over time is the more it fails, the faster it fails, and the sooner those failures occur. And so we're starting, and we've seen failures. Some of them are from contractors, but unfortunately, actually, when the contractor hits it, it doesn't matter that it's a contractor that hit it. You've now created a weak point in the line. And so, at the end of the day, you could just go study it, but our recommendation would be to move forward.
So has there been an increase in failures of the town center? I mean,
Off the top of my head, I don't know that 100% in my head, but I think that there have been failures over the years that give us enough pause to make us want to move forward. Chris, I don't know if you have a clear answer to that.
I do not.
What is so for your budget, I got a lot of questions, you can imagine. But you've been very thoughtful. First of all, let me just back up. I really appreciate what you all put together here, right? I think it's well done. It's very clear that you're, moving in a direction that I think is a really positive one for not just SJRA, but WWA, because the residential lines are going to need the same kind of protocol at some point, right? AC lines there, whether they're 6 inches, 16 or 26, they can all kind of benefit from whatever we do decide at this point. So well done on that, and thanks for being very transparent about what you know and what you don't know. That's really helpful, I think, and where you have to go to get help and go to get it from others. And I think probably the industry is learning, right? I would say communities are all now starting to get in. It's not like we've been doing this for 100 years. So maybe the industry is evolving as we are too, right?
That point, just to drive that point home a little bit here. You might have heard AWWA M77 referred to every once in a while. There's some directors who've kind of discussed it, and that is a standard on doing condition-based asset management for water systems. That was developed in 2019. So it's not that it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the AC lines are now getting to the age around the country where they're going to start having problems. So everyone's going to start dealing with this, right? So I think that makes sense to me. And anyway, good job getting us here. The concept of just going forward with the town center, I guess there's some opportunities I'd like to hear about, and the Harper's line is interesting too. I think that's probably
Because it's small and it's individual.
yeah, and you're going to be touching it anyway. So pull the coupon, do the test, and you kind of can do it. So the thought of going to a perfectly good line, pulling a pipe out of it, section out of it and hauling it off and putting a replacement, piece in there is part of your destructive testing protocol, right? Do you have a feel? So in your budget, did you come up with a number of like how much that would roughly cost, assuming an average kind of project?
I had.
I'm just trying to directionally say
For like $2 million
per sample. No.
Either doing all non-destructive or destructive.
I don't think that's what he's asking. So
Yeah.
per hole,
Per hole.
I think it was around 50 grand per destructive hole.
Okay.
And so like, if you gotta go dig, you gotta
Right,
get down to it, you gotta put
yeah.
the temporary in. So yeah, something along those lines of the 50 grand per hole. So I think what you're saying is,
I was working backwards.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I was getting there.
Yeah,
Yeah. He was about to do this.
you were doing that.
I was about to do the math, right? Yeah. So what the numbers, let's call it 50, just
Yeah.
for grins, it might be more than this. That includes the engineering analysis for sending it to the lab, getting the lab fee, getting
Yeah,
the
that's
engineering
more
fee.
just the cost to go get the lab
Okay.
work
I
done.
think it'd be helpful. So on the,
Contractors.
Yeah, the
yeah,
contractor to dig the hole, send it off to the lab and get the lab results, not the analysis
Yeah.
on it.
so I think for me personally, and maybe this team, really kind of unpacking that 3.5 million to give us a sense of how much is non-destructive cost, how much is destructive cost, how much is engineering analysis versus lab testing costs, things like that. And the reason I asked for that information is well, one of the things that strikes me is that if you're going to put a 4-year program, we're going to be doing this probably for 10 years, for 15 years. Do you have a plan to build some expertise internally so you're not going back to a consultant every time to say, here, we've seen another set of test results. We've kind of, here's the test results on this kind of line. We're seeing them over and over. They tend to come up with a remaining useful life. Somebody's going to come up with that number
Right.
for you.
I think
And
that consultant will be with us for the entirety. So it's not something that we're going back to them. It's a conversation where we have something that we're working with them throughout.
forever.
Because if we see trends happening and it's the
Yeah,
same thing, it's predictable enough that it's like, maybe we don't
Yeah.
need to do the whole thing because the results are all coming back the same, good or bad.
And, I mean, we want to be nimble, but, we don't have anybody on staff with the skill set. So we would want that consultant to basically be paid to help us. And so they may go
I
months
see that in
without
the
talking
beginning.
to us.
Yeah, I see that in the
Yeah.
beginning. But my question is if I'm putting a 10-year program together
Right.
and I'm going to pay a consultant every year to do something over and over again, I would have to assess, well, what's the value of having something internally, to building that capability internally? It's just something to consider.
That we have services that we have, stuff like that we have to do. And we do that where you analyze, and we've talked about it of like, all right,
Something to,
after the first 3 to 4 years, do we have somebody that we can have as a project manager that kind of gets up to speed on it and that we can train up?
Yeah.
But right now, we just don't have that. So at least for the first 4 years, we would propose to have that consultant.
I think a similar example is we have, hydraulic models, softwares for our wastewater
Yeah,
system
sure.
and our water system, to where to build those originally, the effort, that's all consulted out. But we actually do have a couple of internal staff members right now that can run and utilize those models,
Yep.
whether it's just a simple operational scenario for Chris and his guys. So, long-term, there is possibility, how complex is the modeling? How complex is the program moving forward after the initial phase? It's something we could consider.
well, you'll build internal capability and you'll start getting the hang of it. I feel pretty confident of how to come up with a number that says, hey, we can push this off 5 years or 10 years. Someone's gonna have to make that call. Someone's gonna have to ultimately make that decision and say, we're good on this line for now.
Right. And we'll be part of that.
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah,
We're not
sure.
handing it off completely. It'll be
Yeah,
them educating us and us talking together about it.
But that's one of the main reasons for wanting to do the whole testing to begin with, is to really look and see what is the life of the product.
and recognizing that we have the vintage of the pipelines,
Going back to the seventies.
go back, and we can kind of group these together a little bit. Town Center is gonna give us access to 1978 vintage pipe, right? Based on your analysis. If Town Center were approved now, you would start doing that work
2025.
25. And I think you have provided some information before saying you're probably gonna touch that pipe in about 30 different spots.
Yeah, so
Right.
I looked over the plans this morning to get you that answer. It looks like we'll have bore pits in places where the pipe already needs to kind of come out. So 30 to 40, something
Yeah.
like that.
So the one kind of coupon per mile was given to you as a cycle or a frequency based on going and digging up perfectly good pipe that's in the ground today, pulling a coupon and just testing it kind of in a proactive manner. I guess one of the kind of the questions is, well, when you're doing a project, when you're actually digging it up, you're going to touch it 30 times. I probably don't want to test it 30 times, but I might increase that. I'd rather maybe say this way. Do you want to do just 3 though?
So I think you noted there's 4 different segments. So
Yes.
we probably would break it up and do a handful of some of those pits, not 30 or 40, but, look at it and go, all right, Grogan's Mill, this is a pretty long stretch. It's about a mile long. get one in the north, get one in the south, because we're about to have to go do another project in the south. It'd be good to have something in there. And then if you got one in the middle, maybe that's good. And so,
And I think part of the data you would be collecting when you have those open holes is just observational,
Right.
with the joints and such. So
No
it's
doubt.
not like you're sending every single one off to be physically crushed and chemically tested in the
Right.
lab.
so talking to our inspectors about, hey, take pictures, like as they're getting down to it, like before they start to just really disturb things. Start taking some pictures that we normally would,
Absolutely.
right? Let's start looking and see what we see.
Yeah. And so I think you put a number in there of 15 million to do town center,
Sir.
and that grew from 10.
Two, I think the last time.
Okay, so there's 1.8 for this testing.
No, it's we got 90% plans and costs have gone up.
Okay.
So, the firm that's doing the work on those plans had a project bid in Baytown that was very similar. And based on the cost per linear foot that they got, the costs have gone up some more. So we're continuing to just refine those as we get them,
Okay.
so unfortunately.
And I believe there's also the cost in there for like the construction phase services and construction materials testing and inspection during the physical construction of the project. So you would have that engineer of record that put together the drawings, reviewing submittals and being there through the construction project also. So there is some cost in there for those additional services beyond just the construction estimate.
So we're still not getting any sampling data or testing data till
2020, from town center, from that 2025 period.
25 on. So we
Yeah, if we bid it in early, like January, let's say January 2025, you really wouldn't start construction and start to dig holes probably until March. Just because you gotta get materials and all that sort of stuff rolling. So it takes some time. So it could be mid to second to third quarter of 2025 before we get data from town center.
On this bond is the engine, it says preliminary engineering for Panther Creek. It's 2 million. Is that 2 million just for the engineering? It's not,
For the preliminary engineering. Yes, so it's a pretty, if you look at the map, there's some pretty long stretches in there. Probably break those up into some separate packages so that we're in here, get the work, but pretty big projects, those next two. And so we want to get ahead of them and start understanding that we've got those prices right for the construction numbers.
if you do the engineering. And look, I mean, let's say for whatever reason, it's determined you don't need to do the AC pipe right away. That engineering still
Still good.
can be resurrected later on.
Right.
Dust it off.
Yeah. So that's what we're starting with, the preliminary engineering on that, not all the way through final. And so we're kind of trying to phase it in so that if it needs to be put off, you could. But those two projects, if you look in the prioritized plan right now, are projected to go to construction in 2027. So we feel like if we start in 2024 with our testing, we'll be able to catch that before it, I guess, quote unquote, gets away from us. From a design
So
perspective.
would you test Rogan's Mill and Panther Creek as well?
Probably at the very beginning.
So this is, okay,
Right. Yep, we would prioritize that. That's kind of what I said is we probably would move some of those up and try to get them tested as early as possible, just to make sure, do they need to move out? And can we just pause on that preliminary engineering? But if we find, by late 2024, early 2025, that we get results back that show it's bad, we haven't lost a year. And so that's kind of our ask.
and would you also test the town center water line?
That would be the
Or is that just assumed?
opportunistic testing. So we're not gonna go in 2024 and dig down and test anything. We would just take the tests in 2025 when we get there. That's what we're thinking right now. We may talk to our consultants and they tell us to do something different, but that's our plan for now.
How much contingency is built into the town center water line? How confident are you of the consultant on this number? Because I don't have a lot of confidence in, they're not contractors.
Yep.
They're not, they don't buy the material, and maybe they are, maybe they know all that, but.
It's something that, these engineers do this regularly. Right now, the market is very volatile, just to be honest with you. Like you see what's happened even since we started estimating in 2017. And just to be clear, we probably shouldn't have been estimating in 2017. Like we didn't have the experience to really look at some of these projects effectively. But that 149 jump to 200, that's not that original engineer was not good at their jobs. That was a planning level, 30,000 foot view. The engineer that took it earlier this year drilled down and said, okay, based on town center, we know we're going to bore at these locations and driveways and major crossings. And let me look for other things that are anomalies that we can see, and let's drill down on that. So if you're auger boring, it costs more. If you're horizontal directional drilling, it costs more. What are the disturbances per kind of linear foot? Like, they looked at all of that and they did their best on that. For the town center, you're asking specifically on that one. As best as we know, they're doing well. They've talked to contractors. They've got the bead on what the most recent bids of similar work, so pipe bursting on 16-inch water line in Baytown. That's the closest thing we've got in the industry.
I remember talking to Ed a few months ago and on the whole pipeline of 200 million, he said there was a 30% contingency
Correct.
Right.
in that. And
So-
which I thought was really high, because it's not like it's a renovation where anytime you renovate, whether it's a home or a factory, you're going to run into the unknowns. But just to replace pipe, it struck me as high contingency.
That's industry standard at the level that we're at on all of that. If anything, it's actually maybe low at the planning level.
But for town center, at a 90% found design, I want to say it was either 15 or
Yeah.
20%.
15 to 20%.
That they've reduced that. As you go through the preliminary engineering, usually it's still around 30%. And then as you go into the further design phases, it's coming down to where when we bid it, it's usually 10 or 15.
So the town center engineering's already been done.
We're at 90% advanced.
90%.
And, like Dan said, that number comes down, but when I talk to engineers in the industry right now, they'd like to leave that contingency a little fluffy, just because it really depends on the contractors and their availability right now. The contractors are not hungry. They're not looking for work. If you give them a big enough project, town center is a big chunky project, so they're gonna want it. If you make a bunch of small ones, you may only get one or two contractors and your bids are gonna be high. And so we're trying to package these things that make sense, so. Any other questions on the asset management? I know for time's sake, if y'all have more questions, we're happy to answer them. Filter them through Eric and he'll get them to us. So, Eric, from that perspective for y'all's time, are y'all good for now? Next month, we'll be back.
Yeah. No, I'm not good for that. I'm good for now.
You're good for now,
Not now,
right?
no.
So feel free to send more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think to tackle this and to get all the MUDs to agree to do anything, I feel that given the extreme, the range of perspective we have,
Right.
I think we're going to have some alternatives to put in front of us to be able to digest either pieces in a smaller way, to come up with some other way to demonstrate that we're advancing our testing data and analysis. At the same time, we're making progress on repairing lines that are getting out of date. Okay. And I think right now that the $25 million kind of big monolithic cost you're trying to put in front of us with a town center line with I like the testing program. I understand what you're doing. I think certainly can sharpen the pencil on that and figure out, where to really kind of start on that and what you're going to start learning on the way. And I appreciate what you've done. But to me, I think we're going to have to get down to a much more granular level to really to approve something like that, even at town center. And I say that because I just know the positions are sitting out right now. And I think it's going to be really important that we have some alternatives and break down those costs so that we're building, every step we take is building on the base foundation of our data. And we start having a clearer picture of what exactly we have to do. And hopefully can start peeling some of this stuff off the table or pushing it out much further. I personally like to see town center broken up into smaller pieces. And the reason I say that is I know you've got some high priority lines in that project. You've got some, it's all high priority, but there's some even higher. You got to expand one of the lines. Perhaps consider thinking about how we approach one of the lines, learn what you've never done this yet, right? We have not replaced an AC line yet in this community, correct? Going at that project, arguably the most difficult project you have, based on all the stuff that's sitting around those pipes, is pretty ambitious and is the place where we're going to probably have the biggest opportunity for uh-ohs and cost runs and things like that. And it's just a traffic nightmare. It's a disruption of a lot of things. And so I would just like to, maybe propose that you think about it a little differently, take some pieces out of it or do a single piece on it. I know you've done 90% engineering on the whole thing. But Six Pines might be, for example, a perfect place to start. And to get in and interrogate Six Pines, get the pipe expanded like you want to, because you need that for some hydraulic concerns, right? And then you start launching into the rest of it. It's a separate line. It's not connected to the others. It's kind of a one-off piece that's sitting out there by itself, but has a special need, which is to get a larger pipe in there. I think an approach like that might help get us to the place where we start what we're interested in doing, and we're not digesting the big town center project all at once. From a standpoint now, we have like no information about what we're going to get into, right? That's just my reaction right now, to wanting to look at some alternatives around town center. And I think that's the only way we're going to get all this stuff done. It's my personal perspective.
So you've had 9 breaks in 23 years. Has that? I mean, so it was breaking 23 years ago. I mean, is there an escalation?
I don't know about that.
Well, it says from 2000 to 2000.
We have all the breaks. So the first break might be 2020.
Oh, I see. This is all of them.
The last one might be 2020.
The data from like 2000 to 2014 is sort of sketchy. We started an enterprise asset management program in 2015 where we really started collecting data better. That's one of the reasons by 2017 we could see we had some issues because we had better data. And that was where we really began to put some things together.
What is the bond? Why is it all lumped in together?
It doesn't have to be.
I like
That's
that.
kind of how we've positioned it.
There's things I like part of it and there's other, but you hate it.
Yeah, there's others who kind of said the same thing. So get those thoughts to Eric of how that's broken out and how that goes through is not something that's set in stone.
And
You also have some, there's some complexity to how you would fund it. So in this case, it would be bonds. Well, you don't want to do 15 $1 million bond issues or 25 or whatever. There's bond issuance costs doing that on every single one you do. So breaking up in 2 small pieces is going to be even more cost prohibitive, just from a bonding standpoint. And then how do you kind of manage that, all those different bond issues over that period of time? So that's another thing you need to think about, just on the financing side of it. Because most likely, when you start selling bonds for this, it's going to be wrapped up in your wholesale water rates. They're going to be coming back from SGRA through you as pass-throughs. So, and that may be a reason to break it up into smaller pieces, but I wouldn't go too small, just because then it's going to start getting cost prohibitive.
Right.
And Connie, it seems contradictory that like we're holding, we're doing condition-based testing on everything else. But we just assume the town center needs replaced. I mean, is there why is that the case? Like, I mean, I haven't been here for 5 years or 30, right? So I missed out on some of the history, but why not test some of the town center before you just spend $15 million?
Honestly, it's because we did do a desktop analysis that is a critical piece and component, and there has been failures, and when we have more, and the risk of it happening again is closer every day, and that's the concern. And so we're really here to make sure that we maintain the level of service to the Woodlands. And the concern is that if that pipe fails, it'll take us right now to 2025 even to start construction. And so if it begins to escalate in any way, like, we're caught flat-footed. So we've got 90% plans. If we shelve them for a year or two and we don't go forward with property acquisition, if we don't move forward with the different things we need to be doing, then we'll have to wait that much longer to react. And so for us, and what we've heard from previous mud boards, so we do have some different folks in the chairs, was to move forward because the risk was too much in town center. And so, I mean, that's really, this is kind of something that we're asking for and y'all get to vote on. And so if you tell us not to, we, may have a different conversation.
I guess for me, just to vote, I mean, I'll need more information about, just curious about.
Yeah.
that town center line.
The things that you're
breaks and,
thinking of and
You
need
know, I
one,
see 9 breaks for 23 year or whatever, but I'm just flying blind. I mean, I feel like I owe it to my. To whatever. my
Absolutely.
neighbors, you know?
you got some others who are asking for some more information. Get your questions. Like I said, Eric has been fielding all of them and funneling them through to us. So get him your questions and, we'll do what we can to make sure that we're prepped for September to answer the questions you'll have. We're not trying to hide anything. We're just trying to present the information as we see it and do our best to respond.
I mean, how much does it cost to issue 2 different bonds? I mean, the management of it seems, we've got lots of bonds already, right? So
Yeah, there's
one versus 2 bonds is not that.
bond issuance cost is gonna be about 20% of the total. Plus cap I, if you put in, I mean, that's what the $2 million was. You won't always need cap I on them, most likely, once you get rolling or once funding stream gets, whether you build it into your rates or whatever. You may not need cap I on every one, maybe you do. But on every single one, you're gonna have 10 to 20% issuance costs to pay the attorneys, financial advisors, the engineer, all the consultants, the AG, and everything else. So, and that doesn't change for each one. So if you did it on one, you're doing it one time.
Costs.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
And I will say that a lot of the consultants that work on it kind of have a cap or a cascading rate. That on the bigger ones, the rate's lower. So that's another thing to think about. It does.
I think it was mentioned in one of the other MUDs, there's kind of like around that $20 million mark is when you get kind of a different level of banks looking at.
That was a good
finance.
Good point. That was mentioned in another meeting. You can get into a different level of banks that are interested in buying them when you get to the $20 million mark.
Do you have some preferential rates?
Yeah.
I could envision a smaller project that you cover in the R&R budget, right? And then you have a whole different approval process as well. So I just think we're in a world of needing some alternatives, right? And I think Garrett, you guys are on the same path. So the process is we deliver questions to Eric. And they're just the answers will show up in September. Is that how it's
We'll
gonna?
send them along and it just depends on what we've got and we'll talk with them of how we want to best address the next phase. But September is really an opportunity for questions to be answered.
Yeah.
So for y'all to process the information that you've received today, think it through. If you've got thoughts early, if you've just come to the meeting prepped, we'll do our best to respond.
Will we see other MUD's questions?
Sure.
I mean, I would think each MUD could
Yeah.
benefit from hearing the
I'm
question.
not loading
and
them all up and dumping them. I'm kind of answering them and then passing them through as they come in. Just to not overwhelm, all at once.
Yeah. I guess so.
So, but I don't see why not.
We're trying to.
Certainly, I think as the answers come in, we could collate all those answers and put a packet together.
Kind of like we did with the wastewater plant. It was a document that went around. We saw answers to others' questions, right? It's pretty helpful. Okay.
Is it appropriate to comment? Might vote next month or?
No, I think we have to, I don't think so. I'm not ready to vote next month, but
We're not-
I don't think you're asking for a vote. Yeah.
Listen about the discussion.
Yeah.
There's a couple districts that kind of indicated, what if those A, B, C, D, E were kind of broken up into different pieces, not like broke the project up into pieces, but vote on this piece, vote on that, vote on that.
Not a line item.
There was different ideas throughout the week.
I'm anxious to get testing going, right? It's the big capital kind of expenses, I think that we're all kind of adjusting to, so, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, folks.
Number 12.
11, 12. So any update on the Bear Branch crossing?
Good evening, everyone.
Hi
I'm
there.
Brett Rayleigh, the Lake Commerce Division Manager for SDRA. And I'm responsible also for the O&M on the Bear Branch Reservoir System, so the dam and all the floating plays. So as you know, MUD 67 had put the point on getting funding through the Water Development Board for a proposed project to try to make some channel improvements to help reduce the impacts of flooding in a certain region along the stretch. We had a progress meeting on August the 8th, and Mike participated in it, and it was a good exchange. Pretty much the exchange centered on the modeling efforts that LJ is referring to today, as well as a discussion on their alternatives analysis that they're in the middle of doing right now. As far as the modeling, as you see on the, well, I'm sorry, I put a reference. As far as the modeling that they're doing, their models have calibrated well to reality, to stream gauges, to known high water marks in the region. So they feel very good about their modeling as far. Right now, they're working heavily on the alternatives analysis. Our discussions, we talked about some geometry, some dimensions of the channel design. We talked about some thoughts on slope and geometry and size, et cetera, of the mitigation ponds down near Gosselin. And there was good input. We talked about the idea of some tree buffers bordering private property, and maybe between the ponds and public thoroughfares, things like that. And so I think it was a good discussion overall. We have another meeting on September the 12th, but by the end of this month, the engineer will produce a draft report on the alternatives analysis, as well as a draft report on their simple analysis of spillway configuration for the dam. So we're looking for that. And by the time we get to our September 12th meeting, we'll have had a chance to comment to the engineer on that draft report. And that'll be the basis of our discussion on it.
Okay.
Any questions that I can answer?
Any questions? Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, Spring Creek detention study, any updates on that?
Yeah. Not really, nothing that's changed since last month, really still continuing discussions with the solar company, working to set up meetings with elected officials to try to debrief them on the project and where we're at. And then the next public meeting, it won't be scheduled till like March, April time next year. So that'll be our third public meeting. Okay. That's all for now, and as we get more info, we'll bring it to you.
Perfect. The attorney's report.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gordon Cranner. I'm filling in for Brian Yates this evening. I have nothing specifically to address you about underneath the attorney's report, but I will be addressing numbers 15 and 16.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead and move
Let's
on.
go right into those then.
Item number 15 is an amendment to your district information form. This amendment is on the Google Drive. It didn't make it into your packet. It's only amending one thing. So attached to your district information form is the notice to purchasers, which is a document that all purchasers of property within the district receive. It contains information such as you're in the ETJ, the township, your tax rate, your authorized bonds, your issued bonds. The language is legislatively mandated and it was a little clunky. So in the most recent legislative session, they just updated the language. So we're just updating it so that you're in compliance and that kicks in officially September 1. You will see another amendment to your district information form next month in connection with setting your tax rate.
So nothing material. I mean, I think it's in here that we're supposed to approve this or sign this.
Yeah, it's for approval, but nothing
Yeah.
material. It's just updating the language to match.
Just reflecting what was updated at the legislative session. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Cool. And then on 16, so the policy for director's fees.
Yes, so that's going to start on item page number 39 of your packet. So this is an policy. Yeah, I think we should take a vote on 15 separately. Is there a motion to authorize that amendment?
Second. All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So moving on to item number 16, this is an amendment of your policy related to fees of office and expenses. So the fees of office for directors have been the same for 15 or 20 years, and the legislature in this most recent session just amended that provision to allow the director per diem rate to track the rate for legislators for their per diem. And so we have amended the policy to track that language. So what it's going to do from now on is, as that amount increases, your per diem rate will automatically increase along with it. And that rate is $212. 221, sorry. Oddly, what the legislature did not do is increase the maximum amount that you can make per year, which is 7,200, and is not divisible by the day rate amount. But there you go. And while we're amending that, we're also making one additional change to this policy. And that policy is that change is related to virtual attendance at AWBD meetings. So when this policy was put into place, obviously virtual attendance was not an option, but in the past few years it has become an option. So we're doing this with all of our districts, and we're just making this policy clear that if the conference is 3 days and you want to attend virtually, watch the videos, online at home, you're entitled to a maximum number of 3 per diems for attending. So if there are 21 videos, you can't watch for 21 days. So that's all. Since we're adjusting it, we figured we'd fix that this time. Does anybody have any questions about the policy amendment?
I was curious about the 7,200, why it was pulled out. But why wouldn't it still track? Is that 7,200 in the legislative session document or guidance?
The
Or is that even
7,200 is set in a different statute.
Okay.
And it's, sometimes good decisions are made, and when they're changing laws, they just don't anticipate the ripple effect, and nobody that. And honestly, most boards, most directors, I think I've got one. Last year.
Okay, so you're just gonna keep it hard coded in there at 7,200 and reflect the rate, and if that changes, we'll change it again another time.
That's right, yeah.
Gotcha.
7,200.
Just structurally, just trying to figure out why you approached it this way. Okay. Okay.
There any-
Okay, so any questions on that? So we have a motion to approve. Motion. All food say aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Any object? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right, general managers report.
All right.
Aaron.
I actually don't have any general items to cover tonight. So I was gonna pass it on to John and let him talk about our public outreach as we started doing a few months ago.
Sorry, the communications report wasn't part of the packets. For you?
Sure.
Yes. Shockingly, the weather, water use is a hot topic right now. Won't end anytime soon, so we are communicating a lot with customers who are concerned about keeping their landscapes alive and their escalating water bills. So when they come to us, one of the biggest tools, best tools we have is WaterSmart. And it works in two ways. We can work with them remotely. They'll get on and look at the same screen and show them how they're using their water, and that almost always that high water bill is tied to consumption, right? They go hand in hand, unfortunately. But we also, in doing that, give them a tool that they then take forward, right? And they can use as long as they're a customer with us. And so, teaching them to help themselves, basically, to better manage their water use. So I bring that up to say, when you're talking to concerned customers, friends or neighbors, if you got 15 seconds, go into WaterSmart. That's the first stop. Get them on WaterSmart, get them understanding how they're using their water. They need help logging in. It's really simple. They just need their account number, but if they're struggling, have them call us. Call up with us water. They give you the account number, they walk you through the steps. It's really simple, and off we go. We are about to enter September, which would kick off the fourth quarter of our strategic plan. We're going to shift focus to value of water. Doesn't mean we're abandoning water conservation or other messaging. We will heighten the focus on infrastructure, financial aspects of our water system, rates, and so forth. So a little bit different tact in our messaging. Page 2, some positive statistics to report. Using page views as a metric on website visitation, continuing the trend up. July was our second biggest month ever. And monthly page views for 2023 are averaging 30% more than last year and almost 40% more than our previous 5-year average. That's a nice barometer of the overall effect of our marketing. Of course, the weekly e-newsletter continues to be an important tool for us. A fun thing to point out, we have a contest going to rename that. A sexier name, if you will, or more attractive name. And we've gotten a ton of response on that. It's been really fun to engage with folks who have over 100 entries already for that. So,
Who gets to pick that name?
well, we're
Have another
We gotta
entry to
figure
figure
that
that out. Yeah.
still time to enter too. You could win a rain barrel.
Yeah.
If it ever rains again. We're gonna start including the in-person outreach calendar monthly. So you can track what we're doing, where we're at, and then, of course, we always encourage you, welcome you to come join us.
Yeah, we can go up at some of these.
Yeah, please do. Please join us. And happy to give you information on any of these. And we'll, of course, add to this as we go along. We'll be adding probably some more Village Association events. All right, page 3, just some current marketing pieces there for you. Won't go through statistics unless you have a question about something, but I do like to point to those so you know that we track these closely. And we're always trying to find best use of our advertising dollars. And on page 4, we did add Nextdoor to our social media suite. We are, the River Authority is progressing well with the communications consultant there for the infrastructure renewal plan, and the board is due to vote on that on August 24. You hope to be working with those consultants in September. And then finally, you'll see a little bit different face on the back of the water bill. We did a little redesign there, try to make it easier for folks to figure out how to understand their water bill, how we arrive at their charges, and then just make better use of that real estate to get some of our messaging across. Any thoughts or questions?
Social media is the plus.
Sorry,
Just add an extra.
I was just, yeah, we added that.
Thought maybe I'm getting.
Actually, well, it's.
Well, they gotta change Twitter and put the X on there, so you're pretty close, you know?
You're gonna love Nextdoor.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah. People are noisy on that one.
responding.
Get in the middle.
It could be an event.
That was great. You know, clearly all the effort is paying off, touching more people. People are getting more information, and boy, at a time like this, it's needed. So it's really great to see the
It
results.
seems so. Will be doing some surveys here in the next couple of months. That will give us a better indication of kind of impact.
Excellent.
I think the Water Smart app, it's amazing how just people just kind of, they don't understand what's going on. But I got this call last week. This guy is just like, what's wrong with my water? It's on my phone. It's just going outrageous. I was like, well, okay, I'll drive over there. So I go 2 blocks over and he's got a vendor outside power washing. And I called him back. I'm like, there's no leak. You got a vendor out there power washing your house and he's hooked up to your water system. He goes, oh, that's right. But you know how you just don't think about your water consumption and he's at work and he gets this beeping going off that is this irregular consumption or whatever it comes up. He goes, oh no, this is bad. I got to call Diane. It was like, what? But it works. It works. People are becoming a lot more in tune with not just water usage, but when that little thing goes off, it just goes, abnormally high usage and like, what?
I assume these channels are gonna be used when they're staring down increased taxes and costs and all that, kind of setting it up for that.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Start telling the story.
Get everywhere you can.
We have some fun ideas we're thinking about too, in terms of getting different content out as we go forward. Obviously, with the estuary consultant coming on, that's going to help us with some ideas and content as well. But yeah, these forums or the media source outlets are really, we're figuring out which ones kind of resonating, who's opening, which ones. Seems like the irrigation weekly e-blast is getting a lot of play.
for us right now.
And that feeds most of our social media content too. So we make good hay of that.
Because it's becoming not just irrigation recommendations, it's got all that, a bunch of other good information.
Are they communicating? Do they reply to that email or are they just going through social media? How do you hear from the consumer?
They will email me directly. I include that in there. And then I have all the statistics through Constant Contact is the tool we use. So we can track open rates and click rates and all that good stuff.
Got a lot of word of mouth too. That's what we were saying. The more you can talk to your neighbors about it, get them on there.
Well, having these little upcoming in-person outreach, I'm looking at that, so I'm showing up. I mean, because there's just so much that you can do, just, putting a human face behind it and just like your local rep here and talk to people, because we got some big expenses coming up. We got to be able to educate them as to we're not being, just spending your money uselessly, but we're really consciously trying to do the right thing.
All right, John, thanks a lot. Trustee report? Want to go through that? Anything outstanding that we haven't talked about?
No, the biggest item there was, what you heard tonight. You heard the AC water line was probably the biggest item of note. There was a short discussion, update on Region H, from Arthur. And then the budget, which you saw your own tonight, so. Those were the main points. A lot of discussion on AC. That was
A lot of people watched the meetings and I'm glad we recorded them. I think it's excellent. Yeah. Okay, I don't see any need to convene to close session. Okay. So then we don't have to open. So really, we're looking at more public comments. No one's come. Any matters to put on? Sorry.
Just one extra thing. Shelley provided some pictures at your place.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Saw those.
Pictures from Bev Redstand. I just wanted to point out that we're getting good pictures and we're optimistic we can reduce bandwidth.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Any items for placement on future agenda? All right, I think we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.